Way, did you take in any of the rematch involving Tony Khan and Ariel Helwani on a Tuesday afternoon, an in-studio visit by the president of AEW, and they did not come to blows. There was no anger exhibited this time around, and overall, this seemed to be a much more positively viewed upon interview than their first meeting several years ago.
Certainly, yeah, as was the expectation. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't expect a similar vibe. Certainly, I mean, I have to kind of really remind myself of what the vibe actually was that last time. It was during the pandemic, and it was a Zoom interview.
It was 2022. It wasn't like full pandemic era, but it was not an in-person interview. It was over Zoom or whatever. But yeah,
Okay.
that was the interview that Ariel had stated afterwards was the most frustrating of his career. And then, of course, all the AEW folks, I guess, came after Ariel. And then when Ariel did the work at Elimination Chamber in Montreal, that led to another wave of back and forth between these two, with Tony Khan tweeting at him, Ariel coming back with the snowman reference, and it was going to take a lot of thawing of the ice for the two to come back together. But they did this past week. There have been several AEW guests over the last little while, and Tony Khan came in to promote Full Gear. So they talked for nearly an hour and a half. And like, if anyone has been following Tony Khan media appearances, I would say for a good year plus at this point, we have sort of seen this Tony Khan that has been, a lot less combative or throwing, bombs toward WWE, and instead just opting to play the nice guy when it comes to WWE and all of their oppositional tactics. And you had like a measured Tony Khan that was asked a lot, and outside of a couple topics, he gave answers to just about everything. It was like his line was kind of when it came to contractual issues or certain talents that are in flux with the company.
Yeah. Well, I think we can tell. I don't know if it was simply just through his own maturity or his own realization that like the way he was responding to these topics and the way he was acting online or in interviews was not really conducive to like a positive perception of his company. But over the past year, Tony Khan has taken a different tack towards these sort of issues, and even towards like being attacked by the company, by his competition, and I think it's paid off really well. Whether it's advice that he's been given or just the fact that he might have realized it himself. I think in wrestling, you you build a heel by selling for the heel. And I think he's finally learned that if you don't want to inflate the heel, you don't sell for them. And he instead, like just kind of
He's Road Warrior Hawk taking Jerry Lawler's pile driver. That's what he's doing. He just pops right back up and laughs.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like Ariel asked him, "How did you feel about this photo of all these ex AEW talents holding their championships?" And Tony said, "It made me think about the great times I had when they were holding their championships in my what is it? John Moxley and Cody were holding their championships in my background. I mean, it just made me think of great warm memories. And how could you be mad at that guy? For a guy for that sort of reaction. So I think he's been doing great this year in the media, and this almost felt like a sort of climax of like that." That sort of this sort of new philosophy he has in dealing with the public.
Yeah, it was one that, I mean, it was very evident in the earlier days of AEW that I think he looked at the fact that, hey, there's a lot of fans that were clamoring for the Monday Night War, and doing this like company versus company, like that's good for us. Like we want that oppositional force, and we want to be aggressive with that. And that's definitely been a change of the public perception that at least Tony Khan has presented. I don't think he wants to be going into these. I don't think he wants to put his own talent in a tough spot when he would come out aggressive on Twitter, and then you would have talents that would all ultimately have to answer for that when they're out in the media as well. You can argue either way. I'm not saying like this is probably the best approach that you can go. The guy has plenty of ammunition that he could fire back, and he's opting not to. Instead, he's kind of no-selling these. And he could, as I talked about with Brandon today, like when it comes to the head-to-head battles, like he could really fire back at like, let's look at how much damage that did to us versus what they have opted to do since then. Like, you no longer have Saturday night's main event on NBC. Not to say that AEW was the reason for that, but as much as we looked at All in Texas potentially being harmed by WWE running 2 shows that day, how much was WWE harmed by, going against your opposition's biggest show of the year? How much was like interest in WrestlePalooza on this nascent app that few people kind of understood going into that weekend? Like, having a wrestling opposition, like, did that hurt or harm things? And these are all things that Tony Khan could use, and he's rather, hey, let the people who are the viewers of this show, they can come up with those arguments. Go to town online, but I'm not going to be the guy to like the match and throw it on the gasoline.
Why argue it himself to make him, look like he cares about it that much more, when you have people like us who can talk about it for him, or maybe other people in the know who'd be able to bring up those facts for him? Anytime somebody like says something really stupid in our YouTube comments, John, I really have to hold back at not responding. And most of the time, I'm really glad that I do, because more often than not, some of our very smart viewers respond on our behalf, correcting those people. So those tend to be, I think, some of my favorite reactions, and maybe Tony Khan to a much greater extent than us, of course, is experiencing the same thing. Why even focus on the competition when I think he's learning that they're very much self-owning themselves this year? This has not been a good year PR-wise for the WWE, and AEW, doesn't really have to do much more. They have to all they really should be doing is continuing to focus on themselves.
He also was asked about various talent, and that included Chris Jericho, who he was very complimentary towards, said he would love to see Chris back, but would not state when his contract is up. But I mean, AEW itself, when his deal was re-signed, like, it was reported at the time by Variety, it's up at the end of this year. I think everyone knows that. And, he still
sending him a happy birthday message in November.
That's right. His birthday was 10 days ago. So they've at least been in some contact. Others asked about Britt Baker. I would say with Britt Baker, it sounded much of the two. It would sound like Britt Baker was one that, like, he just wants to find a reason for her to come back. Obviously, there's more to the story than that. She's been gone for a year at this point. But, he seems like, of all the talent, like, we don't know when her deal is up, but it's one that you could foresee her coming back. But it's been a year since we've seen her.
I think he seemed the most, well, at least we can be the most optimistic about her return, judging by his response versus maybe some of the others. We don't know the contractual status of a Britt Baker, but it seemed like, according to at least Tony's answer, he expects her back. So what does that say?
Yeah. One that it did not sound too optimistic about at least any return imminently is Adam Cole. And by imminently, I mean, if ever. He went as far as he was willing to, that people are aware. He previously had head injuries. He was happy that Adam Cole came to them and just said, I'm not prepared to wrestle. And I mean, he was like creating a on-ramp that Adam Cole could come back. He will always have a role in this company. He can do commentary. He can do all these other things. Like, it really does sound like the end of his career could be the end result here.
Yeah, I think this was maybe the most revealing sort of like public statement about Adam Cole we've had since his absence. You're hearing from his boss here, who I assume would be one of the most people in the know. And I mean, it sounded, well, certainly it did not sound optimistic at all at a return. In fact, it to me hinted towards like almost a permanent, career ending, which it was sort of the vibe that I think we assumed, coming off of the actual retirement speech itself, and in dealing with concussion issues, which is, no secret, as I think was discussed in this interview. That's not as much of a surprise.
And then he had this answer when asked about the mysterious Andrade. November on the Post Wrestling Cafe will include Rewind Away, looking at some of the biggest retirement matches in pro wrestling history with selections from All Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and Stardom, among others. Plus, we'll have reviews of TNA Turning Point, UFC 322 from Madison Square Garden, and the Tanahashi Final Homecoming. John and Wei will be taking all of your questions on this month's installment of Ask Away, and John gets together with Brandon from New Jersey for a Season 4 retrospective of 90210. All that and so much more. Join now at postwrestlingcafe.com. $6 gets you in the door.
I think the world of Andrade. I had a great experience with him, and he left on the best of terms.
This is back in the day.
This was the original time.
Yeah.
And now, when he said he was free and made his one-night appearance, I was thrilled to see him again. And anytime he's free and whenever that is, he is absolutely always welcome in AEW.
Did he misrepresent his status?
I can't speak to that.
Fair enough.
But I really, and it's the first time I've said that to you, but I do appreciate that. And it is an interesting situation that I am going to keep an eye on, but I absolutely think the world of Andrade El Idolo.
Yeah. So, I mean, he can't comment on it, but he certainly didn't refute anything that's been out there. So I kind of take it to mean some sort of, well, it's not a confirmation, but it's certainly not denial.
No, I think everyone kind of understands the situation. I guess the question is of, if there is going to be any resolution to this, if it's going to be a year that this guy, you can't touch him. And again, like, it brings up the question, like, if he is bound by a clause in his WWE deal, like, I don't think he can be paid by AEW, I would think. He can't be earning a living elsewhere if this contract is being enforced with a clause in it as well. So,
well, hold on. We are assuming that his clause states U.S.-based company as competition and not globally, right?
That we're aware of. Yeah,
we're assuming. Right. Well, isn't he signed on to some Mexico dates, or is he not?
He has done, to my recollection, he did one crash date, and then he's been doing like meet and greets and stuff. I think he's only done like one match.
He did the crash in October 10th.
Right. So that would he showed up October 1st, maybe, in AEW. It was the first week of October that he did the one appearance in AEW, and then I guess it wasn't until, a week or so later that he disappeared, because it wasn't immediate that it was discovered that this deal was in place, because the following week, everyone was asking, well, where was Andrade the next week? So,
right.
So he has not done any matches since the crash date, correct?
No, not according to Cage Match. Only that signing. So, yeah, I mean, does that say something? The fact that it extends beyond the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that's out there. I mean, it would be, suffice to say, very, very frustrating if you are an Andrade at this point. But it does seem like AEW is not doesn't feel like it was, that there's a spot waiting for him, essentially, is what you would have taken from this.
Yeah, clearly, at least you don't get the sense from this that Tony holds any sort of ill feeling. So obviously, he wouldn't hold Andrade at fault for what's going on.
And beyond that, I mean, we did a big discussion going through some of the other answers on Pollock and Thurston today. CM Punk did come up, and again, he was, I wouldn't say complimentary of CM Punk. He did point out that he disagreed with some of the characterizations Punk made when he was on Ariel's show about a year and a half ago, but said that, hey, I wanted to mend fences and work with this guy, but ultimately that didn't happen. He seems to be happy where he is, and quite frankly, we're happy where we are. I think the interesting question would be, and I don't think you would get a straight up answer, would be, and really it's one that, given so many factors, it's not going to be one, but would you still do business with CM Punk if that ever arose? But that would be an interesting question if the guy was 37, not 47. It's probably not going to be an option. But hey, that's another one where Tony Khan could have just stated, listen, Ariel brought up Punk's characterization, just running him down as a poor leader, as not being an effective leader. And Khan could have really come out hard at CM Punk. I don't know what your exit or what your answer would have been if you're Tony Khan and AEW after All In beyond what they did.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like, he gave the ultimate response at the time, and that was to air that security footage on his TV show. I mean,
Which was right after Punk was on Ariel's show. And yeah.
So, I mean, I take that to be really the peak of maybe that version of Tony Khan, you know, the ultra sort of like emotional, like do the most, I thought it was a petty move, you know, to like use your airtime to refute, even if like Punk, you know, if you didn't agree with it, to use your very valuable space in your TV show to air that footage, I think reflected very poorly on Tony Khan as a decision maker. And if you ask the same Tony Khan, if that interview with Helwani took place right now, I don't think this Tony Khan would have reacted at all the same way. Now, Helwani did press him about whether or not he regretted it, but like Tony didn't say that. He stood on the fact that he refuted Punk's accounting of the events, but I find it hard to believe that he would have reacted the same way.
It's hard to imagine that. I don't think the footage was a great idea then. I mean, his argument in favor of it is the fact that it drew an audience. But I mean, I think that footage probably bought them like an added 6 months of the CM Punk cloud over AEW. That in 2024 was still a thing, and it took a long time. I don't think it was till this year that they fully entered their whatever this era of AEW is, which is the post CM Punk era of AEW, that they were still living off of even when Punk had left for WWE. And they brought some of that on themselves by going that direction.
Yeah. Like, speaking of follow-ups, I mean, I thought Helwani did a great job. Ariel did a tremendous job in this interview. I mean, you know, recognizing that, like,
Khan is a tough individual to interview.
Yeah, and that the two of them have, I would say, consider personal history, given some of the words that were exchanged publicly. But I thought he handled it really well and gave us some very like good insight into Tony Khan. Tony Khan was willing to play as well. You know,
I don't think Tony Khan wanted to come out of the, like, as much as we talk about like negative headlines about AEW, I don't think he wanted headlines to come out of it. Like, if this interview was a disaster like the last one, he clearly did not want that outcome either. Like, he wouldn't have agreed to this if he thought, like, he understood like what the game was here, and that, you know, I think that Tony can have a compromise of just being in that sort of promoter role, but also like it's a give and take. That's what an interview is. You're there to promote your product, but they are there to get news and information out of you, and that's the exchange that goes into these. And you can do both, and it's more enjoyable if you can, you know, like, again, it's give and take, and there was much more of that in this interview.
You want to establish some form of authentic relationship with your audience, and that's what somebody like, I think Cody does a great job of doing that. Paul Levesque does not do a good job of doing that, and for a time, Tony didn't do a good job of that. I think he's getting a lot better. So, the one follow-up I do wish like Ariel would have pressed him on would be to straight up ask him, if Saudi Arabia offered you a deal, would you accept it? Maybe we can all assume what that answer, or the fact that maybe he might not feel comfortable in answering, but just to even get it on the record, I think would have been helpful.
Well, you know, as Donald Trump would say, you know, things happen. Things happen to these people.
Unbelievable.